You learn about the practice, you become inspired about the practice. Because you're inspired about the practice, you want to try out the practice. And so you put the practice into practice in your daily life. And then as a result of putting the practice into practice in your daily life, you start getting the manifestations that are guaranteed. And the manifestations feel good to get. And so when you get them and you see that the practice produces what it promises, you want to get more of those kind of results. And so you practice more. And the more you practice, the better you feel. The better you feel, the bigger manifestations you get. The bigger manifestations you get, the more bolder you get. And the more bolder you get, the more you want to do the practice. Welcome to Worthiness Wednesday, where I typically talk unscripted about client experiences in the positively focused practice. I say typically because sometimes I talk about the AI-related influence that is shaping this channel, but today we're going to stick on script. We're not really, these aren't scripted, so there is no script, but I am going to stick to the purpose of this section of the channel and talk about two clients and an important aspect of their experiences, which points to the importance of knowing as opposed to intellectual understanding. Human beings are often confused with these two aspects, and these two clients, I'm going to call them Carl and Kelly, extremely intelligent human beings for whom their intelligence acts as an impediment to understanding and benefiting from the positively focused practice. And so human beings generally believe that knowing means to have an intellectual understanding of a subject or a concept. Like intellectually, they can understand something, and because of their intellectual understanding, they think they know. But knowing doesn't come from intellectual understanding. Knowing comes from experiential awareness of a concept or an idea. For example, this example is often used in a program I used to be a part of called Landmark Education. It's a great example. It illustrates the difference between intellectual knowing and true knowing. So everyone who has learned how to ride a bike knows the difference that I'm delineating here. You can intellectually understand how to ride a bike. You get on it, you pedal until you gain some momentum, you use the handlebars to manage turning, and eventually if you pedal well enough and you get the coordination capabilities, you can ride a bike. That's not accurate, is it? For anyone there, any of the viewers here who knows what it's like to ride a bike, a big part of being able to ride a bike is balance. And until you have had enough experience on a bicycle to get the feeling, the experiential awareness of balance, it's very difficult to ride a bicycle. So the difference between an intellectual understanding of a concept and the embodied somatic awareness of a concept, that's the difference between truly knowing something and having an intellectual understanding of something. Unfortunately, in our society today, and for a long time in our society, we have based our awareness of things on an intellectual understanding, not a somatic, experiential knowing of a subject. And when it comes to the positively focused practice and the effects, the benefits that come from spiritual alignment to all that is, intellectual understanding has no relevance. In fact, it can often impede the somatic experience that comes from implementing the positively focused practice into your daily life. And Carl and Kelly are a good example of this. So Carl, the person I'm calling Carl, I talk about a lot in this practice because as a client, I would compare him to Anakin Skywalker in the Star Wars franchise. He has extremely gifted potential of really understanding and implementing the practice of the positively focused framework and could benefit tremendously from it, just as Anakin had tremendous facility with the Force. But like Anakin Skywalker, this client who I'm calling Carl has the potential to use it to really destructive ends. Destructive only to himself, of course, because everyone is in their own reality and he can't influence anyone other than his own physical reality unless others collapse into his momentum. So Carl not only has this fabulous aptitude for the practice, but he also has developed a lot of negative beliefs about himself, about people, about women, about relationships, about a number of subjects. And as a result of that, he has a lot of resistance on his path. And life being a mirror, it has been reflecting all of that back to him. And so to make sense of his life, he has relied a lot on his intellect, his intellectual understanding of the world around him, instead of the somatic knowing that comes from alignment. And because he has a lot of distortion in his beliefs, his intellect is colored by that. And so his intellect often has him draw conclusions that are not helpful on his path of ascension. Kelly, on the other hand, is also has very strong aptitude to the practice, and like Carl, he is highly intellectual. His background includes deep immersion in Christianity, combined with an attraction to transgender women. And so you can imagine at the intellectual level how those two interests would conflict with one another. And indeed they had for Kelly. Because of his Christian beliefs, he thought that his interests, his romantic desires, were perversion, and therefore he would be going to hell. And just like Carl, he intellectualized his way out of that and found himself to be somewhat successful in life, as Carl has been, but both struggle emotionally, relationally, in terms of relationships with others, and relationships with themselves. They both have a fairly strong sense of unworthiness going on within them. And the unworthiness is arising because the intellectual conclusions they have come to in life are not aligned with the knowing that is their broader perspectives. So when both of these people came to the positively focused practice and attempted to learn how to implement the practice in their lives, they brought their very powerful intellect with them, which had them become stuck in wanting to understand intellectually what the practice is about. Now, there's some value to an intellectual understanding of the practice, but it pales in comparison to simply implementing the practice in your life, seeing the guaranteed results that come from implementing the practice, which are manifestations according to your desires that fulfill themselves without you having to do anything to have them. And so these clients have gotten stuck in the intellectual understanding of the practice, and it has caused them to not move forward in implementing the practice in their lives. Every time they come to a session, they want to talk about the intellectual merits of the practice and how resonant it feels for them to hear how the practice works. But both of them struggle with actually doing the practice, mainly because they both have very strong resistance that keeps them, or I should say blocks them, from a full alignment with their broader perspective in which they can receive the benefits of the practice and therefore move forward on the ascending spiral of the practice that self-perpetuates itself. So the self-perpetuation that is the upward spiral of the practice looks like this. You learn about the practice, you become inspired about the practice. Because you're inspired about the practice, you want to try out the practice. And so you put the practice into practice in your daily life. And then as a result of putting the practice into practice in your daily life, you start getting the manifestations that are guaranteed. And the manifestations feel good to get. And so when you get them and you see that the practice produces what it promises, you want to get more of those kind of results. And so you practice more. And the more you practice, the better you feel. The better you feel, the bigger manifestations you get. The bigger manifestations you get, the more bolder you get. And the more bolder you get, the more you want to do the practice. That's the ascendant spiral of the positively focused practice. It's self-perpetuating. Once it starts, once that flywheel gets going, it doesn't stop. But in order for it to start, the client has to put the practice into practice. And if they come with an intellectual orientation, they can get into a place where their intellectualizing of the practice has them paralyzed in intellectual analysis instead of actually practicing the practice. Curiously, those who are not as intellectually oriented as Carl and Kelly, those clients who come to the practice and just start doing the practice, benefit tremendously from the practice. Both Carl and Kelly have been in the practice for about 3.5 or 4 years each, and both of them are in similar places. If I were to rank them, and I've told both of them this, if I were to rank them according to the other clients I have, they would be near the bottom of that ranking. And so, but at the same time, it's really interesting. At the same time, both of them have had experience implementing the practice, however briefly, and when they do so, they see tremendous, almost immediate results demonstrating their aptitude toward the practice. So what has them not activate that flywheel effect of the positively focused practice? In a word, it's resistance and unworthiness. I'm going to be talking about worthiness in almost all my videos because it's at the basis of a lot of the problems that human beings face. Because they do not have a strong connection with their broader perspective, one that allows them to hear the impulses the broader perspective is giving them, which if followed would lead them to everything they're wanting, effortlessly delivered to them. Because they don't have that connection and can't hear those impulses, they're getting a random combination of some little things they like, but a lot of things they don't like. And as a result of that, they conclude that people in general, not my clients, conclude that life is random, objective, full of risk, and that good things, bad things can happen to good people. And because of that, they draw conclusions that further cut themselves off from that broader perspective connection. The purpose of the positively focused practice is to cut that out, to soothe the propensity to conclude in ways that are not in alignment with what your broader perspective knows. And by doing that, come into alignment with your broader perspective. And in doing that, allow yourself to receive the blessings that the universe has been storing up and constantly trying to deliver to you, but you do not receive because you're not in the state of allowing, which is analogous to say, which is almost exactly the same way of saying you're not in alignment with your broader perspective. So the positively focused practice, if you have heard what I've said in the last 13 minutes, the positively focused practice promises several things that are guaranteed. Number one, guaranteed results that are consistent across all clients. Number two, a consistently improving life experience wherein your desires fulfill themselves without you having to do anything other than rendezvous with them, allow, and then rendezvous with them. The third thing it promises is a stronger connection with all that is, giving you access to your eternal nature, not as theory, but as actual lived condition. And then the fourth thing it promises is an awareness that you are an eternal being. And when you live your life from that, you cannot help but experience the flywheel effect of the positively focused practice, which is the ascending spiral of a life that constantly gets better with no end in sight with regard to how good it can get. That's it for today. Happy Wednesday. See you in the comments and see you in the next episode.